All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Royce with Viking Wax Press, and we're part of the Alternative Football panel. Tonight with me, I'm going to be hosting, and we've got John, who's at Runbone68 Run68Bone on X, and then Mike T-Bell. Mike, what's your X address if people want to find you?
Well, I'm pretty fickle on it, but right now it's at Pro Football Therapy, so Pro FB Therapy.
All right. And behind the scenes, we have Rick 8-Bit. He's doing our directing behind the scenes tonight, so we want to give him a shout out too. So tonight's episode is a little different. We're done with the UFL season, so we wanted to give everybody a recap of all of the various alternative football leagues that are out there, since we are the Alternative Football panel. So we're going to kind of give a brief overview of each league that runs during the non-NFL schedule, essentially. So we're going to kind of go through season by season, starting with the one that runs the earliest of all of these, which is the LFA. And Mike T-Bell is going to tell us about that. And I think we might have had a timeline graphic that kind of shows the breakdown of everything. I may have forgot to send that to Rick, but I can put that on my X account later if you want to look up Viking Wax Press. I'll post that out there, and it shows the timeline of everything non-NFL football that we're going to be talking about tonight. So, Mike, I'm going to kick it over to you.
All right, yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I just want to say I love that intro. That is so cool. It's like a retro football game from like the Super Nintendo days. So thank you, Rick, for that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so let's start off the LFA, south of the border, also known as Liga de Fútbol Americano Profesional. That season runs till May 23rd with playoffs in May 30th, and then the championship game was on June 7th this last year. Just wrapped up the 11th season. There's actually 9 of what's called the Tazón Mexico, or the Mexico Bowls. So that's their version of the Super Bowl or United Bowl. And 2 of those seasons were actually canceled due to COVID, unfortunately. They rolled into this last season with 7 teams. One of the teams folded. I think that's a theme we see a lot in alternative football. Leagues just trying to work things out, teams trying to work things out. Another team that's been around for a little bit had some disagreements with the contracts, money. So they did roll in with just 7 teams, got rid of the divisions. And they did have a new partner that invested in them in this last season, called the Global Capital Partners. They invested $100 million into the league, and they're kind of terming this new era as kind of LFA 2.0. With that has come a really cool ESPN deal that started before the season. So the way that kind of works, even if you have ESPN Unlimited, you kind of got to be in Mexico for those. But ESPN and Disney Plus subscriptions. If you are in those regions, you can watch it. If you're in the States, you can watch on Telemundo Deportes, as well as there are some that are hosted on Peacock. So some good stuff. It does kind of go parallel to the UFL season, so it does conflict in that way, but it is some pretty good football, and they do like to do the NFL rules. So they're kind of structured straight NFL rules, and they're trying as much as possible to kind of collaborate with NFL players. They do invite former NFL players as guests to the games, go into the booth, talk a little bit. Sam Darnold was one of those, Emmitt Smith last year. They do have an alliance with the CFL, kind of a partnership that they worked out, kind of give CFL players an opportunity once they've been dropped to have more, to be able to kind of get some more tape going for themselves. There is some investment from NFL players. So one of those teams is called the Osos de Monterrey. So players like Blake Griffin, Christian McCaffrey, Greg Kittle, Luke Kuechly, Julius Peppers, Sam Darnold, all have kind of an ownership stake in that team. They have some cool things like the salary cap. I really like this part because they kind of just make sure that everybody gets their food, gets their portion. The level one is they're allowed to bring in foreign players, 5 for each team, and then 2 Canadians. Highest salary goes to this tier, tier 1, and then they get bonuses for hotels and food. Level 2 is the franchise players. You have to be Mexican born, and then you are guaranteed the second best salary on the team. Your level 3 is your starters, about 17 to 20 of those. And then those are a lower salary than the tier 2. And then you have your level 4, which is just your depth chart bench players. Level 5 being your practice squad players. There is a draft. They have kind of 2 collegiate style leagues. One's called the League Mayor Onifa, and then the Liga Premier Kona Deep. Players play for about 5 or 6 years. You have to submit your interest. You're classified by position, and then draft order goes by team standings. We did have one ceremonial NFL player play in 2017, Ocho Cinco. So he got to play for the Osos, which were called the Fundadores, and I'm probably messing up a lot of those pronunciations, so I'll work on that when I download Duolingo after this. But we just wrapped up this last season. They kind of combined another league. I can't remember exactly what that league was called, but it was like FAM was what they merged with. And that team that merged with them was the Quidillos, and they just won the Tazón Mexico. I actually watched the game. It was actually pretty cool. Former Auburn quarterback Jeremy Johnson, he's been one of the league leaders. And then Shelton Epler, he was the Osos quarterback. So it was the Cadillos versus the Osos. And he set all the records this last season. Epler did. Pass heavy offense. It is like watching, some like preseason NFL type talent. Pretty good. It was interesting to see that the MVP was a cornerback that did spend time in kind of all the leagues. Central Michigan for college. His name is Deshaun McNary. Had spent some time on the Bears, Chicago Bears. Go Bears, by the way. Sorry, Royce. And then UFL Calgary Stampeders. And all he had was just a fumble recovery for a touchdown. So it was kind of a defensive battle, lots of turnovers, lots of fumbles, lots of sacks. And it was really interesting if you go through the order of 1 through 7. So your teams are, just for the fun of it, Cadillos, the Osos, the Dinos, Raptors, Reyes, Galos Negros, and the Mexicas. And 1 through 7 in order of finish is literally the order of point differential. So the highest scoring teams were the ones that made the playoffs. The top, same as the UFL, top 4 make the playoffs. And the top 2 teams that made the championships were also the top 2 defenses. So really exciting. I'm looking forward to getting more into it. The crowd was very loud, so it's cool to get that kind of local engagement. It was a full packed house, 20,000. They didn't give an exact number, but they said it was over 20,000 for that to Zone Mexico. So good season. That's the LFA. Looking forward to revisiting that in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, they've got some really cool helmets, really cool uniforms and stuff. So in the past on my YouTube channel, I've reviewed the helmets of the LFA. In fact, I've done most of these leagues we're going to cover today. So if you want to check those out on my YouTube channel, helmet rankings, those are fun to do. And they did have one UFL player come over from the LFA a couple years ago, and then he went on to the CFL.
Juwan Manigo from the Renegades.
Yep. Yeah. He was fun. He was fast. So
yeah,
pretty cool stuff. Well, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the NAL next, which is the National Arena League. And the NAL, so I got a little graphic that just kind of breaks down some of the rule differences and things like that. They are eight teams in the league, everywhere from Amarillo, Texas, Louisiana, a couple teams in Colorado, a couple in Kansas, Sioux City, Iowa, and Nebraska. So they're mainly Central America. They're a indoor football league, arena league. So 50-yard field, walled in. They have it. This is an 8-on-8. Basically, 8. Each offense has 8. Defense has 8 guys on the field at the same time. They play 14 games. Most of these players are playing both offense and defense. They have rebound nets where if you, on a kickoff or a missed field goal, you can play the ball off the rebound off the net. So that's kind of unique. And then they also have some different rules, like pre-snap forward motion is allowed for multiple people. And then they have different blitzing rules for linebackers to make it a little more offensive centric. So it's a super high pass, fast, high scoring game. So pretty fun to watch. NAL, it is available on the NAL streaming network. So if you want to check them out, they run from March 7th through June 21st is that season. And now I think I'll move on to the IFL, which is the Indoor Football League. Now, the Indoor Football League is the league, I would say, with the most teams in the indoor or / arena genre. And they have, and I'm not sure if we want to get that graphic going, if you can, behind the scenes, Director Rick. But the IFL, they play on the IFL network and also Yahoo Sportsnet this year. They're available. So a little broader broadcasting. We're close. Hopefully I gave them the right graphics. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So yeah, their season runs March 14th through August 16th. So they are kind of mid-season right now. They have 21-man rosters, 8-player squad. So it's another 8-on-8 league, another 50-yard field with padded walls. They have a little bit different kickoff where if they kick it through the uprights on a kickoff, they get 2 points. It's called a rouge. And they don't allow any punting in this league, which I thought was kind of fascinating. So you're basically going for it, and if you don't make it, you're turning the ball over. So it's super high-powered offenses. They just had their let's see, I guess mid-season. No, I'm sorry. They didn't have their, I guess it, sorry. I'm trying to figure out how to best say this, but last season, there we go. Last season, the Nighthawks from Vegas won it. So on my graphics, the team that's pictured in gold is the most recent champion of that league. So the Nighthawks are the most recent champion, and they're doing good again this year. And they played last year. They played the Blizzard, who are also having a good season so far this year. They have, let's see, what was this? 14 teams, I believe. Yeah, 14 teams. So it's pretty heavy. And they've got a lot of teams that have been around forever. If you look at the Iowa Barnstormers, the Jacksonville Sharks, San Antonio Gunslingers, and Arizona Rattlers, they've been around since the 90s. So there's teams out there that, and they were part of the old Arena Football League back then, but they've since been in the IFL for quite a while. So IFL has been around since 2009. So a lot of people may be familiar with it. And a lot of players in the UFL have bumped back and forth between these leagues, especially it seems to be the Orlando Pirates have a pipeline to the UFL. So very fun league to watch. That championship game last year between the Blizzard and the Nighthawks was amazing. Came down to the last second. So if you get a chance, I highly recommend the IFL. It's a great league to watch. Okay, and we got a comment in that says from Mike, XFL Mike G. Shout out to XFL Mike G. He is unable to make it tonight, but he is awesome. And he said it is definitely one of the strongest alt football leagues. And it's true. It is, and it's been around one of the longest too. So really solid foundation. They'll probably be around for another 30 years. So, yeah, and then Rock Renegade. I remember the Rattlers in the AFL. Yeah, they've been around since the 90s. So pretty cool stuff. Okay, I'm going to move on to the UFL. Now, most people watching this probably are aware of the UFL because you probably found us through the UFL. But I'll kind of recap it here. We are done with the current season where the Kings just won the championship a couple weeks ago. Their season runs from end of March through mid-June. 10 games, 50-man rosters, 11 on 11. So pretty much NFL rules with a few exceptions, like sudden death overtime, 4-point field goal from beyond 60 yards, and no punting after you cross the 50, which I think are great rule changes that they implemented this year. It makes it more exciting for me. So really fun teams to watch, some great coaches. I think last year we had over 100 players signed to the NFL out of the UFL. Not everybody made the final rosters, but expect to see that again this summer once people start signing for those fall preseason games. They're going to add a lot of UFL players into the NFL. So if you want to catch NFL players before they get to the NFL, this is a great place to watch them in the UFL. And most people know, too, they are a combo of the USFL, which came back in 2022, and the XFL, which came back in 2020 and then again in 2023. They combined leagues to make the UFL. That's a little recap of that league. And now I'm going to move over to, I think we're going to give it over to John and have him talk about a few different leagues.
All righty. So that's a great job talking about everything you've all talked about. So I'm going to talk about the Arena Football League 1, the AFL 1. So I have a couple slides on this. So the league started last year. It's an arena league. It goes back to the arena rules. It's very similar to the NAL, with the 21-man rosters. They actually have 24-man rosters, but they only play 21 players. It started in 2025, took some existing teams, new teams, and there's been a lot of drama recently with the season. Right here, you can see this is the 8 current teams. That season actually started with 9 teams, and there was a team in Oregon called the Oregon Lightning that basically went under about 3 weeks ago, and they had to redo the schedule and stuff. And if you've been watching anything in the news, the Kentucky Barrels recently had some drama with players not getting paid, from what we understand, and they've released several of them and suspended them. And I was able to watch a video with one of the front office personnel about an hour before this show started. Mm-hmm. And he was saying that the Barrels are still going to play their last regular season game. They're in 3rd place currently in the AF1, and they will have a roster and be able to be in the playoffs in 2 weeks. So even though they're having drama. So it's as we've talked about with alternative football teams fall away, paychecks, investments. There's all sorts of stuff going on with these leagues. We can go to the next slide. It's very similar to what Royce put up with the NAL, 50-yard field goals. They have walls. They have rebound nets. It's all very similar stuff. 8 players. It's almost exactly the same rules. Arena football rules are very similar across the leagues. They can go for 2 very fast-paced league. You can watch the games on Vice. They also show them on YouTube. You can also stream them through the AF1 website, so people can kind of see what's going on here in the league. If you want to go to the next slide, we have the current standings and when the league starts. So it starts in April. The regular season is going to end on July 19th. So basically, it's a 15-game season. Everybody has 3 bye weeks. This season's been a little bit different. You can kind of see right in there what that is right now. The Nashville Cats, which is where the headquarters of the office is involved in the league. The Albany Firebirds last year went 12-0 and are the defending champs. And so they're doing really well right now. You can see the Kentucky Barrels. So it's pretty good, a little fun information. If we go to the next slide, of the AF1 is that Jeff Fisher is the commissioner, former Tennessee Titans, St. Louis Rams, and even the 2022 Michigan Panthers head coach. He did go 2-8, and so he moved on to be a commissioner of an indoor football league, of Arena League. But he's the commissioner and kind of runs everything. And like I said, last year the big thing was an undefeated season. That's hard to go undefeated in any level of football. And so that Albany, up in Albany and upstate New York, was able to do that is really kind of a fascinating story and a great thing. And a couple of those players got chances in the USFL, even though they also went back. I believe it's Sam Casanovas. He got signed for a while in the UFL, but then went back. But he came right back, and he's quarterbacking the Albany Firebirds right now. So
yeah, he was signed by the Showboats before they kind of changed the format of what the UFL was going to be. So then he got to be able to go back to the Firebirds.
There's a lot of good players out there and only so many teams and spots. That's why there's so many leagues for all these guys. But that's kind of the AF1. It's a really good thing. Now, I'm going to talk about European football, but the American Dream Mall. That's right. So
I think that was the Billings versus Albany. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
do want to pause real quick and give a shout out to the World of Football podcast. They do have a YouTube channel where I learned everything I know about all of these different alt leagues from them. And they are currently the official podcast of the Arsenal, the Michigan Arsenal in the AF1.
Cool.
So if you want to check them out, they do a great job covering the Michigan Arsenal. So highly recommend that channel.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so, but American football is also played outside of America. And so there's actually a civil war going on in Europe between leagues. So between 2021 and 2025, there was one European League of American Football, the ELF. Because after COVID, if you go to Europe, they're in a lot of different countries, they all have their own leagues. Like the Maple League in Finland's been around since 1979. The German Football League, the GFL, has been around since the 1980s. There's the Italian League, which just had their championship on this weekend that I watched between Parma and Florence, Fienza. And it was a great shootout. It was like 50-43. It was a great game. That was all in Italian. I couldn't understand anything they were saying, but it was a good game. They were playing there. So the idea was to take the top franchises and the leftovers from NFL Europe and the old World League of American Football from the early 90s, bring those teams back and do this. If we can go to the next slide, it went under. And it went under because there was a lack of transparency and you had two different kind of ownership groups. So after the 2025 season ended, 11 of the 16 teams that were in that league left to form what's known as the European Football Alliance, or the EFA. But within the EFA, there was a break-off again to form another league called the American Football League in Europe. And so that's what we have right now. And the EFA is kind of like the NFL and the CFL. It's owner-oriented. They kind of meet as a commission, and they meet and they discuss, and the owners work together, kind of setting their policy. And it's very local focused and such. While the AFLE has a lot of external investment. Its corporate headquarters is in Rawlins, Wyoming, because an unnamed American family has invested a lot of money, an undisclosed amount of money, into the league. Now, their office headquarters are in Hamburg, Germany, but you have an American family and corporations investing, but they're remaining nameless as of this recording. So it's interesting, the different kind of like investor external forces with the AFLE and the EFA being very much the local owners of the local European franchises. We could go to the next slide, please. So there's a couple, sorry about the school teacher, my graphics always turn out differently than what you'd think, but the AFLE, and so some stuff got mixed up here. So I made a mistake, and I'll be honest about it in there. So the EFA, the European Football Alliance, has 6 teams, and they have a one league structure. So everybody plays twice in a 10-game season. They're currently playing right now, and they'll wrap up their regular season on August 9th. Then what they're going to do is they're going to have a big shebang in Frankfurt, Germany, and host their 2 semifinal games at the same stadium. So the fans would all come to Frankfurt and have a big weekend and get like a 2-for-1 deal in terms of going to the game. And then they'll have the championship game the last Saturday in August. They're going to have their championship game in what's called Tivoli Stadium down in Innsbruck in Western Austria. And so that's what's going on with them. The AFLE has 8 teams. 4 of them are new teams kind of owned by the league in order to help the local teams that are owned, such as I'm wearing a Rhine Fire jersey, which goes back to 1991 when they were formed in the World League of American Football. And they won 2 championships there, lost 5, won 2, and have won 2 ELF championships at that time. So they're in a 12-game season over 14 weeks. And then they're going to have higher seed teams are going to host a playoff game, and then they'll meet for a championship, which they'll do in Duisburg, Germany, which is the Rhine Fire Stadium outside, which is a suburb of Dusseldorf, if you've ever heard of any of those places in Germany. But they have that stadium holds 31,000. The EFA's championship is being played at Tivoli, and they hold 16,000. And the ELF championship games are averaging about 30,000 people in 23, 24, and 25. So the Europeans will come out for the championship games and get pretty good crowds. Right now, because there's the split in the league, they're averaging about 2,000 to 3,000 fans. And so the same issues we saw with the UFL, talking about attendance, you hear that on the European stuff. I use a lot of Google Translate to read a lot of European articles that are in English to figure out. But their sports people are doing the same thing that we all just went through with the UFL and the XFL and the USFL about how to get attendance, how to get viewers in, and how to do all of that. We can go to the next slide. I'll talk a little bit specifically about the EFA. And hopefully I get this one right.
Yeah. Well, so while that's pulling up, it's kind of the instability, right? That's what causes people to almost flinch and not go, is if they're worried about, I don't know if it's going to be around very long.
Exactly.
They're hesitant at all. They tend not to go to the games, which is sad.
That's right. Well, while we bring the next slide to bring up, both leagues have very similar structures. They have 65-man rosters, and like the Mexican league we talked about with Mike, is they have import rules. Usually they have about 4 Americans, and then they'll have about, both leagues have roughly between 11 to 14 other non-Europeans. So this is Mexican. So guys from the Mexican league have come up and played and are being signed and playing. Canadians can come in, people playing in other countries of that nature. So these are the teams. So the EFA currently has, this is the current standings. It has 6 teams: the Munich Ravens, Nordic Storm, which is out of Copenhagen, Denmark, Frankfurt Galaxy, old school, throwback to the NFL Europe, World League of American Football, Paris Musketeers, Royce's team, which really does have a sweet logo and amazing uniforms, the Prague Lions, and the Tyrol Raiders. The Raiders, I want to point out something very unique about the European leagues. They actually have, and all these organizations that are really old, they have, like, besides their pro team, they'll have under 20, under 19, under 18, under 17, under 16 full contact teams, like high school and university level teams, to build local players up to be on their rosters. They have flag leagues. They have full contact women's teams. And sometimes they'll have, like, full-on club things, like they'll have basketball teams that are associated with it, as well as other sports, even American baseball and some of them. So it's really kind of interesting kind of how the European club system is. Some of these teams are extensions of that, and they have whole support systems that are, because the whole idea is to build up your local youth, starting with 10, 11-year-old flag football, get them into contact football by middle school age, take them through middle school to university level. So when you look at the highlights, like the number 1 receiver for the Prague Lions is only 20 years old. He should be playing college ball if he was in the United States. One of the defensive linemen for the Nordic Storm is 18. He's going to go to Fort Union Military Academy this fall to play prep school football, and then hopefully try to get an American scholarship. But he's playing professional football in Europe. And no, the NCAA, being what it is, probably won't penalize him for professional status. But that's kind of the EFA and what they're doing, and it's really kind of fun. And all their games are free on YouTube. They stream them all live, free on YouTube. If you have Fubo, they also show up there through your streaming services, so you're able to see all the games. Now, Europe is 6 hours ahead of us, so there's a lot of 7 a.m. games you're going to watch because afternoon kickoff times on Saturdays and Sundays. The AFLE, we can go to that. Their standings are a little different. They have 2 divisions. And in their 2 divisions, they have kind of these are the matchups for this next weekend. I just put it up there for the fun of it. I'm sorry, Rick, making you go back and forth. But yeah, you got Paris at Prague, Nordic, which I support because my grandmother was Danish. So I got that family connection there. And you Danish ancestry, and we got it's Tyrol and Frankfurt over at Munich. And Munich's the real deal. They're pretty good. And just for NFL fans, Jack Del Rio, former NFL coach, is the Paris coach. So you have two conferences here. The current standings: Vienna's top in the AFLE. The Wroclaw Panthers are doing very well. Their quarterback is Jameson Wong. He was a all Ivy League quarterback at Cornell. You have the Berlin Thunder, the Firenze Red Lions, who are struggling. You got Alpine London. These are new teams. The Paris Lights are a new team. The Rhine Fire, an old traditional NFL Europe team. So that's their current standings with all those teams. In the AFL.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt really quick. For the old school 90s people, you'll see recognize a lot of different names from the old World League of American Football, and I kind of love that they kind of kept a lot of those teams intact ever since then. So that's pretty fun.
And it's an interesting thing because they had to contact the NFL and get permission, and the NFL basically lets them use those logos for free because it's a good PR move with the NFL trying to expand to doing games in Europe. And I know like the Rhine Fire basically have an indefinite. There was a big controversy. They might have to change their name in the offseason. And the NFL basically just handed them the rights and said, you guys basically have this for as long as you need it, because it's such a good thing to have that connection to the old 90s and early 2000s league. And so here's the matchups for this league. And so they play Saturday, Sunday games. And the hard part about the AFLE is you have to have a streaming service. They do their own website. You got to pay. It's roughly 50 euros, so about $60 US to get a season pass. You can buy the games individually for like $5 US or 2-3 euros. So the exchange rate. So I, bought the package, and so I have that, so I can see the games. So it's a little harder to see their games. They do put highlights on YouTube and everything like that, but the games you can't see live here in the US unless you have that subscription package through their website. So it makes it a little more difficult. So a lot of the Europeans talk about maybe hopefully in the next year or two the leagues will remerge. But going back to the indoor football, I really like learning about the arena, the indoor league. So this is going back to another arena league. And this is kind of fun because this is actually a 7-on-7 league, not 8-on-8 like everyone else. And it's there's no kicking allowed, which I think is a great thing. They literally just throw the ball across the field to kick off. And it's kind of fun to watch and stuff. And so it has 8 teams right now. It's in a good place. And they are in the middle of their season. If you want to go to the next slide.
While you're waiting for that, if you haven't checked out the branding of this league, they have the best branding of any league, in my opinion, out there. The Foos Sports does their logos and stuff, and it's just phenomenal. Just their nicknames and their branding is super unique, totally unique.
They are, and they have their games on YouTube. You can see them. You can watch it through their website. Their website's really good, really nice, really slick how they've done it. And they have 2 divisions. They're of a short season. They have an 8-game season, so they have a bye week on July 4th, and then they have their last regular season is coming up here. Oh yeah, the Iowa. Woo! I mean, they have some great names. I mean, I'm more partial to the undefeated Nebraska Siege just because I'm a history teacher, so Siege sounds really cool.
I like the Greenheads.
Oh, the Greenheads is really good.
Really cool.
The interesting thing about this is the 2-time defending champions of the AL TAL are the Duluth Harbor Monsters, which are now the Minnesota Monsters in the AF1. They jumped leagues. So they're going to get a new champion for the first time in 3 seasons this year because of the change up.
Go Lunkers.
That's right. I mean, the names are so great, but it's very similar. If we go to that. Oh, yeah, it is so throwing the ball back. I mean, it's so fun to watch that. I was watching a bunch of their games before we got on tonight, just, sitting there with my daughters watching it, and they were like, what are they doing throwing the football? I said, it's just the rules. It's wild, crazy indoor football. So if we go to the last slide I have, it's 7-on-7, no kicking of any time, no punts, similar to other leagues that Royce talked about. Throw-offs instead of kickoffs. They can do double forward passes, which I thought was really cool. Yeah. So, I mean, it's very offensive built. And again, most players are Ironman football players. They're going offense and defense. And especially because they only have an 8-game season, they got to endure everything. Otherwise, it's very similar to all the other arena leagues. But the no kicking, the double forward pass, the 7-on-7 instead of 8-on-8, and no punts, no field goals. It just really is exciting football. And I'm really excited for it. And a Heisman Trophy winner Tim Brown, former Raiders great Hall of Fame wide receiver, is their commissioner. He's got some good videos on the internet where he's talking about the league. And of course, I talked about on my last slide, the Duluth Monsters, Harbor Monsters are now long gone and part of the other league. But yeah, a lot of great indoor football being played and a lot of great football being played in Europe. Both the AFLE and EFA in Europe both play NFL rules, similar to our friends down in the LFA in Mexico.
Yep. Good job, man. Okay, I think up next we've got the Continental Football League, and Mike's going to cover those for us.
Great job to you. Those slides were amazing. I'll definitely step up my game on those next time. But yeah, moving on to the Continental Football League, the COFL. It's kind of a little bit of a revival from the name from 1965 to 1969. And the coolest part about this league is that it's a hybrid of the CFL and the American football rules. So basically the way that they play that is the first 3 quarters are going by NFL rules. And then the 4th quarter is what's known as the Continental Shift. And that's where they shift to the CFL rules. You go to the 3 downs, unlimited forward motion. And really that whole premise is so that, there's players that, won't move up to, the other leagues. They might move up to the CFL. So the CFL scouts have a chance to scout them as well, using their own rules. And my favorite thing about it is that they're kind of filling that summer football gap. A lot of these leagues kind of run parallel to each other, as that one graphic you're going to share later, Royce. So I hope that this league kind of really comes together. There's been a lot of hype around this. And what I do like about it is it reminds me of the IFA, the International Football Alliance, that never got off the ground. And so they at least got off the ground. I think we all know alternative football, spring football, all those kind of things. It's tough to start. The finances are hard. And what they're kind of really relying on is a local ownership business model. And, so that's kind of really driven from local crowdsource funding. They operate, individually instead of one big entity of group of teams, kind of similar to, like Green Bay Packers, for example. So I think that will really resonate with a lot of people just kind of having skin in the game. Who wouldn't love to own a piece of their favorite team? I think it's really going to come down to good leadership amongst those teams. I've noticed a lot of similar themes to the teams that have folded or have not made it with the old AFL, kind of how those kind of contracts and teams were folding, the IFA, similar things to that. But we did have one really great success story this last year in the San Antonio Toros. XFO Mike G was super proud of his team down there. I think that whole group just kind of was spawned out of the San Antonio Brahmas from the UFL. Surprise, just taken out of the league and relocated. So, there's massive fan base there that loves football and wants to be a part of it. And that whole community has really risen up and supported each other. And that team ended up winning. They just declared themselves being the 5-0 champs of this last year. There was really no comparison. The point differential was insane, something like 155 plus the last time I had tracked it. Other teams that are in that, they tried to do 2 divisions basically. The Northern Division didn't get off the ground. They did get, I believe, 1 game played. The Cincinnati Dukes. But there's other teams in that Northern Division. Ohio Valley Ironmen. They will be back next year. Michigan Arrows. They went through some ownership issues. Hopefully, they're going to be in the process of finding some new people to support that team. Indianapolis Caps was another one. So they're really just kind of focused on the South Division, which was the Texas Syndicate, Tall City Black Gold, which is a cool name, and the Texas Herd. CEO Manny Matsakis, I probably butchered that name. I apologize, Manny. Headquartered out of Wheeling, West Virginia. You can find all their games on YouTube. United Football Media, who are friends of the UFL, and us are hosting those games on their YouTube channel. Great group of guys, love football. They're aiming kind of for like a 3,000 fans per game. That's where a lot of the money is going to come from, as well as concessions, selling merchandise. They really want to get in on some local TV deals and sponsorships through that. And then one unique thing that they have is called the Los Dos. It's where you can punt the ball from anywhere on the field for 2 points.
Hey.
That's cool.
So I think really cool league. I hope it gets off the ground even more next year. And I think they have a really good model in San Antonio that they'll help get some more teams going.
Nice job, Mike. Couple cool, interesting things. The original Continental Football League had guys like Ken Stabler, Otis Sistrunk get their starts in that league. So it's pretty cool. The history of that league is awesome. So, well, thanks for that recap. I'm going to give our last league here that is kind of the latest in the season. They start their season in June, and they run all the way through November 15th. So the CFL, Canadian Football League, they've got a league that's been around since 1958. And pretty much this core group of 9 teams has been intact in one form or another that whole time. Ottawa has had a little bit of change there, but they're still a team in Ottawa. They went from being the Rough Riders to the Red Blacks because there was already the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. So you had 2 Rough Rider teams for years and years there. But these core 9 teams, Calgary, Hamilton, Saskatchewan, Ottawa, Edmonton, Montreal, Toronto, BC, and Winnipeg. They've got a really well-established league up there. They play an 18-game season, 45-man roster. And the interesting thing is they've got to have a minimum of 21 Canadian guys on their team. They can have up to 19 U.S. guys, and at least 1 global guy can be on their team. And they have 12 players instead of 11 because their field is both wider and longer for now. Next year, they're going to actually change it, shorten the field a little bit. It's still going to stay that wide, though, so I believe they're still going to stay with 12 versus 12. And then they have 3 downs instead of 4. So you've got a high passing league. They're really trying to get that first down really quick. So there's a lot of passing going on in the CFL. Running backs and wide receivers can be in motion pre-snap, which is kind of fun to watch. And then they also have the Rouge up there. So you get 1 point awarded for a missed field goal as long as it's not returned out of the end zone. So basically, once you kick it, if it goes into the end zone and is not returned out of the end zone, you get a point, which is kind of a bizarre rule, but they've had it happen recently. I think that is another rule that might be changing when they go to more NFL rule set here over the next year or two. So, but I love the CFL. It's super fun to watch, high quality. I mean, if you look, especially if back in the 80s, late 70s and 80s, you had a ton of guys, NFL guys, move over to the CFL because they were paying about the same amount back then. So you've got a ton of crossover. In fact, there's a lot of history. Guys like Jim Marshall and the Vikings head coach Bud Grant was the Winnipeg Blue Bombers coached the 5 Grey Cup champions back in the 50s and 60s. So just amazing history back there. So I, again, highly recommend the CFL. If you're not watching the CFL and you have never seen a game, give it a shot because it's so fun to watch. And they really have an awesome history too. So I think that's going to do it for all of our leagues, I believe. So super fun recap. Is kind of awesome to go through and figure out what the differences are between these leagues and how they're similar. In the end, it's football, man, and we love it. So that's cool.
It's all about football.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's a comment in I hope we can put that up about Tecmo CFL Baltimore Stallions. The CFL in the 90s expanded to America, and the Baltimore Stallions actually won the CFL Grey Cup that year. I think it was like
1995.
Wow.
Yeah. And they lost it in 94 because I was in high school and I went to the first CFL game in Baltimore in Old War Memorial Stadium with my father and brother, and we saw Doug Flutie as the Calgary Stampeders came in and beat them in 1994. And so I went to that game, and I had a T-shirt. I had the old original, CFL. It was the CFL. It was the Baltimore CFLers because the Stallions were trying to be the Colts, and the NFL's Colts in Indianapolis were suing them as a whole. There's a lot of great YouTube videos about that, all that drama. But yeah, I was at that first game, and so we were watching those. That was awesome stuff. I'm dating myself. I'm only 48, but I was a teenager.
Well, that's pretty cool. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up the show for it. I guess if you have any questions, throw them down in the chat. We'll try to get to them off air. If you throw them up later and watch later, we'll try to respond. And we appreciate all the viewers out there. If you're into football, you got to give some of these leagues a chance because they're super fun to watch. So I guess, do you guys have anything else before we call it a night?
I would say watch the CFL games if you can, because Canadian football is awesome. I've been watching, since I said, since the 90s. I'm a Saskatchewan guy now because I just randomly picked the team after Baltimore disappeared and became the Alouettes, and I couldn't do the French speaking thing. So, but I encourage everybody to, like Royce is saying, just have almost all this stuff's free on YouTube.
Yeah.
Watch the sporting events. Find some other football. There's so much fun you're going to have seeing something different. And you're going to see players that you remember from college and all of that. They're like, they're still playing. I mean, give it a go. Watch some different football. Be a football.
CFL Plus. If you go on and you can basically subscribe to CFL Plus and get all their games through there. It's I believe it's free. I want to say it's free. So
it's on YouTube TV as well.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I got all mine recorded. So yeah.
Perfect. That's cool, man. So yeah, appreciate it. That's great stuff. Thank you, guys. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We are probably going to be doing, I believe, every other week during the off season, we're going to try to get a show together and talk about some of these alt football leagues, where they're at in the process of their season, and some of the like NFL, UFL to NFL movement that might be happening, or CFL to NFL movement, and those kind of things. So it's fun to watch some alternative football. Now Mike G in the chat has a great question. Which league, CFL or UFL, sorry, has better talent? Wow.
I mean, that's tough. I would say, Bryce Perkins was the UFL MVP, and now he's, second string thanks to an injury from Zach Caleros. But behind Taylor Ogiersma, is that how you say it?
Yeah, former Birmingham Stallion.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feels like CFL is pretty loaded.
Yeah, I think it's just a slightly different game. The UFL game translates a little closer to the NFL rules, but as the CFL changes that, you never know. I would say they're really neck and neck, because the amount of guys the NFL or the UFL sent to the NFL last season was more than the CFL did. So, boy, it's really close. But some of that might be their NFL is just not as familiar with the Canadian people, and they aren't. I know that they are probably watching a lot of those key players, but they may not go super deep on the depth chart. So it's super fun to watch, though. Great players in both leagues. And I would say those are probably the top two as far as talent go of all of these leagues. CFL and UFL are super high talent.
So in this season, the CFL games have been off the chart. I mean, they've been fantastic games. They've really come out firing. They've had close games. Everything's been really competitive. And so the first couple weeks have been really fun to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot to mention that last season's champion was the Rough Riders from Saskatchewan. They had a great season last year, but they've
number 5. We don't win them that often.
That's cool. Okay, everyone, we're going to call it a night. So thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Put us comments down below and come back in a couple weeks. Watch us again. Thanks. See you, everyone.